On today's Locked On Texan podcast, more last to do it, first to renew it. Which current Texan is most likely to reach 1,000 yards in rushing and receiving?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Thursday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you guys for checking us out every single day, and we shout out our everydayers from the Himalayas. And as always, I'm John, some sports guy Hickman. I'm joined by none other than Sports Illustrated and credential media member for the Houston Rockets and Texans, Cody Davis, here to continue our conversation of last to do it, first to renew it conversation. Yesterday, we talked about the edge position, who will be getting double-digit sacks. That hadn't happened since 2018 with J.J. Watt when he had 16 sacks. And who will be the first rookie Pro Bowler? Is that rookie on this roster? Now, today we got something else to talk about. Something that outside of the, looking at the double-digit sack guy, outside of looking at the double-digit sack guy, something more realistic or unrealistic. And I know I may get killed with this, but
yes,
Cody,
it will.
The conversation of, is there a 1,000-yard running back on this roster? Again, I know I'm going to get killed for answering this, but I'm going to say that there is a chance Houston doesn't have a 1K rusher on their roster, simply because I'm not sure the carries will be there. Fun fact, right? The Houston Texans hadn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since the 2019 season with Carlos Hyde. Another fun fact, the Bills had not had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2017. But the Bills' rushing yards per game since drafting Texans offseason edition running back Devin Singletary, 2019, they were ranked 8th overall in the NFL rushing yards per game. 2020, 20th overall, but 2021, 6th and ranked 7th in the league in rushing yards per game last season. Devin Singletary's carries since entering the league on a pretty good rushing team, 150 carries in 12 games in 2019, 156 carries in 16 games for the 2020 season, 188 in 17 games in 2021, and last season, 177 in 16 games. For more context, the Texans' backup running back carries in that time span, going back to 2019, 83 carries for Duke Johnson, 93 carries for the two backup running backs in 2020. 2021 was the year where there was no real starter and there was no real backup, right? But that was the year Rex Burkhead eventually took over. Mark Ingram, 92 carries in 7 games. David Johnson, 67 carries in 13 games. Those were the top options at backup, and one didn't even finish the season. There was also 85 carries between Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman as well. And again, Philip Lindsay did not finish that year. And then last year, 109 carries between 3 backup running backs. What I'm getting at is Houston hasn't had a valuable running back since 2019 with Duke Johnson. He just was complementary to the style of offense that Houston ran at that time with Deshaun Watson, who I believe finished second on that team in rushing yards total behind Carlos Hyde, and was a good backup to Carlos Hyde as well. With the addition of Devin Singletary, I think that has completely changed. And I wouldn't be shocked if Pierce, who I love, usage isn't as high as it was during this rookie season last year. What I will say is that Dameon Pierce in this offense will have some favor for him due to that zone scheme that we believe the Houston Texans will run under Bobby Slowick. Same success that Christian McCaffrey was able to have when he left Carolina last year and went over to San Fran. 2020 and 2021, Devin Singletary had more zone run design runs than power runs. So it's not like he is not a zone runner. And plus, By the time you get to the NFL, you ran some type of zone scheme in your life as a running back. But guys, what I'm saying is, I wouldn't be shocked when we look at this season when it's all over and say, well, they really had a equal backfield in terms of carries, in terms of opportunities. So it would not shock me if at the end of the season we're looking at this backfield and Dameon Pierce has another 900 yards, but we look right over and Devin Singletary also is sitting around 800 rushing yards because of the carries that he was able to get throughout the year.
I understand where you're coming from when you talk about whether or not Dameon Pierce is going to have the opportunity to continue basically being the only person that's going to move the ball for the Houston Texans. John, when we go back to his rookie season last year in 2022, there was moments where Dameon Pierce was the only weapon that the Houston Texans had on the offensive side of the ball, and that led him to finish his rookie campaign with 939 rushing yards, and he would have been a 1,000-yard rusher had he not gotten injured in those final 4 games.
I also would point to the 2 games back to back where I think he only had like 8 yards in those. I can't remember which games
You're right.
it was. But
I think one of them was like extremely early on in the season. I can't remember which game it was. Maybe that first game.
Yeah, 2 back-to-back games where he was held under, I want to say 15 yards back-to-back.
I know one of those games, it was due to them favoring Rex Burkhead. And ladies and gentlemen, let's take a moment to celebrate that we will not have to worry about Rex Burkhead this season when you talk about the backfield. But John, I still think the Houston Texans will have a 1,000-yard rusher, and that's going to be Dameon Pierce. I like the addition of Devin Singletary. He's definitely going to be this team's number 2 running back. However, I do want to mention when I see Devin Singletary, I look at him more so that the Texans are going to utilize him more so as a pass catcher coming out of the backfield, especially when you consider that CJ Stroud is definitely going to need somebody to execute check down passes, because when you take a look at this wide receiving core, it's still subpar at best. Yes, I understand you have John Mechie coming back. Yes, I understand there is maybe 1 or 2 wide receiver we are expecting to take a jump, i.e. Nico Collins. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. However, there's going to be moments where the wide receiving core, 9 times out of 10, they might not show up like they did not do in 2022 and like they did not do in 2021. Which means that CJ Stroud is definitely going to need a security blanket, and he's definitely going to have an opportunity to get that security blanket in Singletary. Singletary has recorded 971 receiving yards over the last 4 years with 4 touchdowns. His best season came last year when he recorded 280 yards on 38 catches and 1 touchdown. I look at this backfield similar to the backfield you just finished talking about. Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. Carlos Hyde was your primary rusher. Duke Johnson was your primary pass catcher out of the backfield. And I think they're going to replicate that. I do believe that Devin Singletary is still going to hover around his 600 yards that he's been able to average throughout his career, because I still see this offense as very run heavy. Yes, I understand you're going to have a better quarterback, but once again, the weapons on your wide receiving core is not there, unfortunately. So when you take a look at what the Houston Texans have going into the 2023 campaign, run heavy, Dameon Pierce, congratulations. When it's all said and done, you will have your first of many 1,000 yards on the ground. This is very interesting, John. I'm ashamed of you. I'm ashamed.
Yeah, no. So I knew I was going to get killed the moment I thought of this, but I really see this team, as you already mentioned, operating a lot with the run game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, man, as much as Dameon Pierce didn't really run the ball through our college like every other running back, he took some big hits last year. And the 2 games that I was talking about was the late in the season, Washington in the home game, and then Miami the very next game. Only had 8 yards in both of those games. And so, I look at the hits that he took last year, and I can see this team really operating as a we thing, not an I thing. And I really do love Dameon Pierce, guys. You have to understand that this isn't a slight to him. It's just more so looking at how I look at the wide receiver group. It's just more so looking at how I look at the front four group as of right now. Do I think that there is a milestone guy right now? No. Number one, haven't seen it. Number two, I think this on both sides of the ball, it's going to be a collective unit. You don't go out there and draft Devin Singletary to only give him what was those numbers again? Like last season, between three backup running backs that touched the ball that was not named Dameon Pierce, 109 carries. That was between three. So on average, that was 36 carries per backup running back. You're not giving that to Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary made eclipse 36 carries in 4 games. In 2021, with all of the turmoil, like the David Johnsons, the Phillip Lindsays, the Royce Freeman. Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman combined for 85 carries, and Phillip Lindsay didn't finish the season. That's not going to happen with Devin Singletary. So when I started this off, my whole thought process was, are the opportunities going to be consistently there? And I can see, again, this is a running back coming from playing with a Josh Allen, playing in a very good running system, who never hit 1,000 but was always an effective runner. I can see him coming to Houston between weeks and having moments where he's just a better running back on the field at that time, and he may take away some carries. I'm not counting Dameon Pierce out, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I really believe in Dameon Pierce, but I do believe that within this system, it's going to be all hands on deck. And Devin Singletary, ladies and gentlemen, is a hell of a runner.
I tell you one thing, between Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce running in between the Texans' interior offensive line, it's going to be
excited about.
Very exciting to see, because between Keon Green and Juice, both of those guys coming out of college, their best on-field attribute was run blocking, and of course Shaq Mason. You already know what he can do in the run game as well.
Yeah, and I think to add to that point of being excited, there will be moments where, hopefully, of course, where the opposing team may not know, like, this guy's hot right now. Dameon Pierce will break some tackles, no doubt about it. Like, and Devin Singletary, I think, will be a perfect closer for you guys. I don't think Houston has had a running backfield this good since Arian Foster and Alfred Blue. So there we are. If you're looking for a delicious snack but don't want all of the sugar and calories, then you need to try the best tasting protein bar on the market. And if you're like me, you want to make healthier choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, you got to check out Built Bars and the Built Puff Bars. Covered in 100% real chocolate, they come in unbelievable flavors like the churro, peanut butter brownies, and cookies and cream. The best part about it all, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein, so you're still maintaining those macros. You can run into your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you're out running errands, or you can get your specialty flavors right now at Built.com. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there in the YouTube world. Really quick, so Arian Foster and Alfred Blue, they were good together. Like I'm looking at Arian Foster, who was, oh my gosh, an amazing runner for Houston. His last great year, that 2014 season where he rushed for over 1,200 yards, 8 TDs, 327 yards, 5 TDs through the air. Like, he was really good. A couple of All-Pros, 3 All-Pros, a couple of Pro Bowls. And that was the last time where, Arian Foster was great for Houston, and Alfred Blue was also pretty good as a backup. But nothing compares to the Arian Foster and Ben Tate days. Like, Ben Tate came in 2011. 2011, Arian Foster had over, what was those numbers? 2011, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 617 receiving yards, 2 TDs. And also in 2011, I'm looking at Ben Tate right now. 2011, Ben Tate had 942 rushing yards, 4 TDs on the ground. So, like, that was a duo that was damn good. And hopefully that's something that between Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce, those two new Texas running backs can replicate. Now let's move on to the wide receiver position. Is there, Cody, a 1K receiver on this roster? Is there when we look at the last to do it, first to renew it, wide receiver, hadn't had one in a couple of seasons, hadn't been there long, like some of the other milestones. 2 years ago, Brandon Cooks was able to eclipse it, right, with Davis Mills as his quarterback. But is it Nico? Is it going to be one of the first year men? Is it the vet and Robert Woods? Is there a 1K wide receiver on this roster?
No.
Okay.
Plain and simple. And look, guys, there's only 2 guys that have a realistic chance. That's Nico Collins and Robert Woods. If you want to say 3, I will add Noah Brown in there. Nico Collins, he has to stay healthy. We continuously keep harping on that. We're going into the second year of us saying how critical it is for Nico Collins to be healthy. Robert Woods is the veteran wide receiver. And with us expecting CJ Stroud to be the starting quarterback come week 1, we all know that it's very important for a rookie quarterback, or at least a young quarterback, to favor and rely upon veteran wide receivers. And of course, in this conversation, in this situation, it would be Robert Woods. However, Robert Woods, his 1,000 receiving yard days are over. And Nico Collins, even with me wanting to see him take the helm as this team's number 1 wide receiver, I do not see Nico Collins being 1,000-yard receiver this year. John, last week you and I had a very fun conversation. A lot of people in the comment section and even on Twitter had a lot of fun with it as well when we talked about, who's going to be the team's number 1 wide receiver. And I think you and I put it best when we said that this is going to be a collective unit. You're not going to have a wide receiver that's going to be the next DeAndre Hopkins or next Andre Johnson or even the next Brandon Cooks, where you'd be like, no, you have to cover him and him only. No, this is going to be a collective unit. And I could see over the course of 17 weeks, any one of these receivers, especially Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Noah Brown, any one of these 3 guys can step up depending on the matchup, depending on the opponent, can step up and be wide receiver number 1.
So, no, I don't think there's a 1K receiver on this team. And that's okay. I guess let's take it a step further. Is there because this hadn't happened since the 2020 season, is there a pair of 800-yard or more receivers? So it doesn't have to be 1K, but is there 2 receivers on this roster right now that you trust and believe can get you 800 yards?
Depending on health, I would say.
I think so.
Who are you pairing? Because it's still the same 3 guys.
So you have Robert Woods, Nico Collins, and who's the third guy?
Noah Brown.
No, I don't believe in Noah Brown that much.
Okay.
I think he's I like Noah Brown.
He had 500-600 yards with Dallas last year.
Yeah,
and I get it. That was with him playing alongside CeeDee Lamb. And I think the opportunity he had in Dallas last year is kind of going to replicate itself here. I understand when you playing with CeeDee Lamb, like, of course, that's going to be like the opposing team's primary, responsibility to slow him down. But in terms of needing a number 2 wide receiver, somebody that could just be reliable, I think that could be Noah Brown. But go ahead.
Yeah. I honestly, I would put, as of right now, I can only put my trust in Robert Woods and Nico Collins. And again, I may get killed for saying this. I think the upside in ceiling is higher for rookie Hutchinson than Noah Brown. And the only reason why I'm not placing my eggs into the basket of a John Mechie is simply because he's been out of football for a very long time.
Yeah.
I look at Tank Dell, and I understand that he is a Weapon X kind of guy, honestly. And I'm not sure how much he'd be featured as primarily as a receiver compared to special teams. Of course, all of this we'll find out more when training camp starts. But I look at the 2 guys with the immediate NFL experience.
Mm-hmm.
Nico, Noah Brown, Robert Woods. But I really do like Xavier Hutchinson, and he is a outside receiver, and I believe that he'll have some opportunities, maybe down late. Again, this offense, I don't think we're going to see this offense just air it out too much. But when I look at the possible three, and I'm telling you, I'm including Hutchinson in that because what will his presence for this offense mean for Nico Collins? Like if he comes and just like flat out outplays him, then he's bumped up from their third guy to the second guy that I can see saying, hey, you know what, he may go out and get 800 yards. And there's been a lot of rookies in the past couple of seasons, like the wide receivers now are coming out so much skilled compared to the previous years, and also the volume of passing now is super high compared to years ago. But like if he comes out and just says, I'm really the better guy out of us right now, out of the outside receivers, then I can see him being bumped up. There is a possibility that we could see two receivers on this team with 800 yards. And again, that hasn't happened since 2020.
I like that you said that, because remember that conversation we had about who's going to be wide receiver number one. Remember I said that Hutchinson has the opportunity, has the ability to where towards the end of next season, we'll be saying, you know what, he might be wide receiver number one. I don't know if 800 is a realistic chance for him.
And that is kind of high.
And that's only because what? When you look at rookie wide receivers who came out and recorded, 7, 8, 900 receiving yards in their rookie campaigns, most of them was, that dude from day one. Not saying that Hutchinson can't be, but I just don't know if he's going to have the opportunities early on in the season. So, John, to answer your questions about, whether or not the Houston Texans can have a pair of wide receivers who can record over 800 receiving yards, once again, that is more realistic in terms of looking at Nico Collins and Robert Woods. However, both of those guys, they have to stay healthy. And of course, in Robert Woods' case, he's going to be playing with a better quarterback, unlike what he had to deal with in Tennessee last year. But
both guys will.
Well, yeah, both guys will.
Both guys will. I do want to mention that. So he's a 4th rounder. Hutchinson was a 6th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at some of these late round picks, it's not like it is impossible. Amon-Ra St. Brown for Detroit, a guy that I really do like. In his rookie year, 90 catches out of 120 targets, 912 yards, 5 TDs. So I'm not counting off the later guys, and I think, honestly, Hutchinson being picked up in the 6th round was a godsend for Houston. He has talent, got him late. There's a possibility that he could hover around that 800-yard mark, depending on what happens in training camp and preseason and so on and so forth between that outside battle. Because Robert Woods is a player that can be moving around across the field and make plays inside, outside, kind of resembles or put me in the mindset of what I think John Mechie would be able to at the NFL level once he's fully healthy and up to speed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. Before moving on to our next topic, John, I have found a really fun fact that I would love to share with everybody. The Houston Texans have had 14 seasons where a wide receiver has recorded over 1,000 receiving yards. And out of those 14 seasons, 12 has come from Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins. And out of those 12, Andre Johnson did it 7 times in his career as a member of the Houston Texans. His best season came in 2012, where he recorded 1,598 yards on 112 catches. John, remember my statement when I said a lot of rookie wide receivers who come into the league and record 7, 8, 900 yards from day one. It's because they are that guy. Andre Johnson was that guy, because during his rookie season in 2003, the young man recorded 976 yards with 4 TDs.
He was a young man at that time.
I don't understand how in the world Andre Johnson is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as of right now. And by the way, he put up these numbers with Matt Schaub being his best quarterback.
Matt Schaub was his quarterback. David Carr, T.J. Yates, Sage Rosenfeld.
Doesn't Case Keenum was quarterback at one
Casey
time?
Keenum was his quarterback at one point. Was he here for Case? I think he was.
I think he was.
I want to say Tony Banks threw him a couple of passes. Was he here for Brock Osweiler?
No, that was DeAndre Hopkins. Somebody else who should be the Hall of Fame was due to the terrible quarterback that he played with, of course, excluding Deshaun Watson from that list.
Who else did Andre Johnson play with at quarterback?
Almost
we're
everybody.
Missing somebody.
I think there was a time he played with me at quarterback. I remember I had to sub in at one time.
Missed that game. I definitely missed that game. So Noah Brown came up that conversation, and listen, my thoughts are Noah Brown is a guy that had an opportunity to get more reps due to the lack of a couple of things. Michael Gallup coming back from an injury, he wasn't himself at all.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at who the Cowboys had out there at wide receiver. You had Jalen Tolbert, the rookie, Dennis Houston, Simi Fehoko. Those were the wide receivers. Kevontae Turpin, the rookie. So they didn't have too many options at receiver. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, there was nobody. Dalton Schultz was second on the team in receiving yards and touchdowns with 560 yards and 5 touchdowns. Noah Brown took advantage of his opportunity, and I think that's why Houston liked him. He's a guy that can come in and really be a part of something that is a rebuild and fit perfectly into the mold and DNA of what this team is trying to build. That being said, I look at Noah Brown, and I have a lot of respect for Noah Brown, but I look at Noah Brown as maybe number 4 or 3 on this team, right? And that's to start off the year. Simply because by the end of week 18, man, what's going to happen with John Mechie? Guys, I really do love his game. I can't wait to see him on the field, and I can't wait to see him on the field when he's had time in the league. What's going to happen with, Xavier Hutchinson? What's going to happen with Tank Dell? All of these guys, especially when I look at more so Mechie and Hutchinson, they have a higher ceiling than what I believe Noah Brown has. And so sometimes talent does just beat out hard work. And I look at Brown as a guy that he's, you really want to find ways to utilize him on the field. He is a great blocker downfield for a wide receiver. That is something that when you start breaking down who you want to put on the field, the vet over here understands how to do the small things that the rookie is just not, comfortable with or not doing to the best of his ability at the time. And so that may be a reason why we're seeing more Noah Brown through the first several weeks. But then sometimes talent just gets on the field and it shows. And so by the end of the year, I'm curious to see where Noah Brown and his impact lies on this team. When the year starts up, I can see him being wide receiver 4 or 3 again on this depth chart for this wide receiver group. But I'm just not 100% sold, that he's just a better option than some of the other guys. I think that he just has more experience in the NFL, which will help him out early on as a Texan.
Do you think that going into training camp, preseason, there is an underlining competition going on between Noah Brown and Amari Rodgers? Because if you think about it, coming into the season, I think we can agree wide receiver number 1, number 2, however you want to put it, Nico Collins, Robert Woods. Then you have the up-and-coming wide receivers on this roster, Hutchinson, Tank, Mechie. There's 2 guys that I'm looking at in the middle, and I can see both of those guys being what Chris Moore was for this organization over the last 2 seasons, to where if you needed someone to step up rather in the slot, rather on the outside, due to injury or whatever the case might be, you could call upon Chris Moore. We know Amari Rodgers kind of like revamped his career towards the end of last season, and he's going to be expected to expand on that. But John, once again, when I look at the addition of Noah Brown, I'm looking at it from a standpoint, I could see him replicating his opportunity here in the city of Houston, because there's no number 1 wide receiver. There are multiple opportunities for him to go out there on the field and showcase what he could do.
We're going to have to get prepared for some tough cuts for this team. And they're going to be tough. No, I'm serious. They're going to be tough because, again, there is no number 1. Mm-hmm. So I think the playing field is even. And I think that's going to be, oh, man, but that guy may do something, but he's just not fitting, or I'm not sure. But I think Houston's going to have some tougher cuts. I like Amari Rodgers. And by the way, I think that Amari Rodgers should be paired with Tank Dell on kickoff return. But I think that's his competition right now. I don't think it's Noah Brown. I think Tank Dell is Amari Rodgers' competition. I think that you look the smaller, shiftier receivers that has some return experience, as Amari Rodgers was able to, return kicks, punts, and kick returns for the Packers his first 2 seasons. How can he get on the field? Well, you want him to get on the field ideally by doing things that he's comfortable with, that he's done before. You just mentioned, and we've talked about it a couple of times, how we've seen Tank Dell fielding punts and kickoff return. So, I think that's his competition. How can you get on the field? Well, how you could get on the field, there's a young buck right now that's pretty damn good, what we saw out of U of H. And when I look at Amari Rodgers, that's another guy who I completely forgot just now until you mentioned his name. Amari is a kind of a special case because he came in and played some good football for Houston last year.
When they needed it, they definitely needed it.
When they needed it, right? When everybody was healthy scratches or just non-existent in the passing game, he came in and played some good football. I'm just curious as to where this team values him and his presence right now. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texan. Make sure you follow us, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube under the name Locked On Texans as well. And follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.